Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Natural Language Processing course. And today we will learn on the chapter 13. We will talk on the other resources like we have seen for WordNets to obtain the data for use in the NLP. And we also will see some other toolkits which can be used to perform NLP tasks. And this is the outline of this lessons. We will first see the resource that we have seen before, like WordNet. Then there are some other available resources, and we can use to fit our needs in the NLP task. And next, we'll see the available resources like NLTK. They are actually libraries which are used to perform NLP tasks. So these are some resources that we can use to get some lexical data, so data sets. Like we have seen in WordNet, we can retrieve the synonym or antonym of a given word, as well as finding information. So we have the ImageNet here, and there are many actually referring to the image processing. We can use some existing images given from this data resource, and we have some other resource like BabelNet and words source here. And in the BabelNet, there are many data that we can use, as it is built based on some other remaining existing resources. And we can also see some other resource like multi-WordNet, which store many languages, and we see the DEN data source, which it is a lexical database for the English word, as well as the Euro WordNet. So now we see the resources and possible link that we can access to each of the resource using the given link here. To access to the BabelNet resource online, we can access to this website. And similarly, for the other resource, we can access to the official documents. So now we come to discuss on the BabelNet. It is actually a multilingual encyclopedic dictionary and a semantic network which connects concepts and name entity, or we call it NE, in a very large network of semantic relation. So there are many relations in the networks that represent the semantic of words that can be connected to the name entity. And it is made up of about 16 million data, or we call it entry. So this is called Babel syntax. So in BabelNet, it consists of Babel syntax. For each Babel syntax, it actually represents a meaning, and it contains all the synonyms for this given set. To access to the BabelNet using the Java API, we can refer to this link to download the dataset. And in BabelNet, it actually a resource which is composed of the existing resources like WordNet, Wikipedia, Wikidata, Wiktionary, Omega Wiki, and the open multilingual WordNet. So from BabelNet, it retrieves all its data from these sources. So this slide gives you an overview of how the data in the BabelNet are retrieved from the existing resources. So we can also access to each of these resources. There are many of them to obtain a specific resource from them. And next we see on DEN, it is also a lexical database which describes the core vocabulary of English at a level of detail. So it is basically for the English language only. And it provides many records of the lexical, like as we have seen in this number. There are around 42,000 headwords, and there are 27,000 idioms and phrases that we can use. And in the context of explaining words expressing in a sentence or text, there are possible sentences that we can access. There are around 622,000 example sentences. And we can access to this resource, use its official document here, webdance.com. And the features that we can use to attach our data to the NLP program, it can relate to the words and disambiguation, because in the words there are many disambiguity that we can use to differentiate between the sense of the word. And we can also do the information extraction as well as question answerings. And in addition to this, there is also a machine translation that we can perform using the DEN dataset. And next we'll see on FrameNet. FrameNet is basically a lexical database for the English language. It provides the human and machine readable text, and it is based on annotating examples of how the words are used in the actual text. So what it means here, we can use these annotated text to be the data sets used in the machine translation. And in total, there are more than 200,000 word sense that can be accessed from the FrameNet. And this is the link to the official documents to the FrameNet. And we can also check on the guideline on how we can get those information. We may need to install some related libraries or register some information such that we can retrieve those information to be used in our research. And the feature from FrameNet that we can use the data to perform some tasks. It can be used in the information extraction, machine translations, event recognition, as well as sentiment analysis. So even we have many data, but those data can be used in particular area only, because most of the data are designed to use in this NLP task. Okay, so next we will see on some other libraries that can be used instead of NLTK for performing NLP tasks. As we can see from here, we have Genzymes and we have PyTorch. PyTorch is currently a very well-known libraries which are used to perform NLP and machine learning. And we have seen the text loop as we have learned from the previous lecture. And actually, scikit-learn is also one of the top library for performing machine learning, as well as NLP library. And we also see Sparsys and PyNLPI here. So in addition to what we have briefly talked in the previous slide, we have some other resources that can be used to perform the NLP using these kind of libraries. We have a pattern here. So when we want to perform the web mining libraries for the Python language, which can be used to crawl the information as well as to pass a variety of sources such as Google, Twitter, Wikipedia data, we can use this library to retrieve those information online. So in such a case that we want to retrieve some data from Twitter, we can actually using the web crawl to retrieve the information. However, we may need to get some access key from the Twitter developer account. And we also have some other libraries like Stanford NLP here. So in Stanford NLP, There are many possible programming language that can be used to perform the NLP task using this library. Also, Python programming language is also included in the Stanford NLP tool. So next we will talk a little bit more detail for some well-known library to perform NLP. The first one here is Pattern. It is actually a web mining module for Python programming language, and it has many tools for performing data mining as well as NLP. And as we have seen on the existing software, it's free for use. That there are many well documented online that we can access to perform some available existing features. As we have seen in here, we can do the data mining. Then the data can be retrieved from the social network, and we can also use the web crawler to retrieve our data from the internet source. And we can also pass the HTML document object modeling DOM parser here. And in the NLP, it can do some post touching using it post toucher, and it can also perform an n-gram search. So basically, I assume that you have seen this word before, n-gram. Actually, a process how we can get term from the sentence. Either it's one word, two word, two consecutive word, or three consecutive word in a given sentence. You can also do the SA as well as finding the WordNet data. And in addition to these NLP and data minings, it can also be used to perform machine learning. It includes some classification as well as clustering, like KNN and support vector machine here. And last but not least, it also covers all the network analysis, which is used to do the graph centrality as well as to visual our data in a graphical format. And in the pattern module, it consists of sub-modules which can be accessed using this sub-module. So in case that you want to do some graph visualizations, you need this sub-module to be included in your program. So this table gives you more detailed information for each submodule in the pattern. We can find the web toolkits that contains like API, Google, Gmail, Bing, Twitter, or Facebook account, or some other social networks that we can do the web crawl to retrieve the data. And we can also use these sub-modules to perform various NLPs or machine learning algorithms. Next, we come to the second library. So this is called Spatie. Actually, we have also tried several programs using Spatie in the previous lectures. Spatie is actually a Python library that provides best way to prepare text for deep learning. So nowadays, deep learning is very popular that can be used to perform the machine learning task, and it gives you more accurate data. So in Spatie, it interprets seamlessly with TensorFlow, as well as PyTorch library, scikit-learn, and some other library, which is now can be considered as a Python awesome AI ecosystem, which have the very well documented on the web. To access to the Spatie, we can access to this link to visit its official website. Before we can use the Spatie, we need to install the library. So to do this with Pipe3, we can install this Spatie. And we also need to download some input data that can be used to existing feature. For features that can be used in Spatie library, we can relate to the linguistic features, including the tokenization, post-touching, with dependency passings. This one referring to the how the words in the sentence are dependent. For example, there is relation between the verb and objects in a sentence. We can also do name entity recognition, as well as to visualize the name entity in a sentence. We can graphically plot, and we can visually see the name entity in the piece of text. In addition to this, it can also perform on rule-based matchings, vector and similarity, as well as text classification and training model, which relate to the machine learning task. Once you train a model, you can actually export those models and load it to be used later. And it supports the visualizers, as you have seen on how we can pass the dependency in a sentence. And we can also use the Jupyter Notebooks, which is an web-based tools that allow you to write codes more effectively, more easy, and it can represent the information in a graph. For example, you can do the name entity recognition, and each entity in the sentence can be visually highlighted in the output. And we have also support some other features in the Spatie library. So next we come to PyTorch. PyTorch is actually an optimized tensor library for deep learning using GPU and CPU. So most of the deep learning, we recommend that you have a GPU support, because comparing to CPU, you may take much time to perform some ML tasks using the CPU specification. And it is an open source machine learning framework that accelerates the path from research prototyping to production deployment. To access to the PyTorch official document, you can use this link. And to install the PyTorch, we may need to select some specific version. For example, this is the current latest version of PyTorch that can be installed using this command. And features that can be supported using the PyTorch library, we can perform on the deep learning. And in PyTorch, it uses the Torch script. It is we need to learn some scripts, how we can write to perform some NLP or deep learning tasks. And it have tools and library to support it. And in the front end of PyTorch, it's basically use C++ programming language, and it also have many cloud partners. Next, we see on Gensim. Gensim is also a library for performing NLP. It is an open source library for unsupervised topic modeling and NLP using modern statistical machine learning. So in topic modeling, basically it's given you a piece of text and you need to predict whether this topic is representing for particular information or category. So using the statistical machine learning, we may need to require a huge amount of input data as well as the probability computation. So basically, Gensim is implemented in Python and Python language. It's really similar pronunciation, right? Python and Python, but they are actually different language. I hope that you have familiar already with the Python. So Gensim is actually designed to process some raw and unstructured digital text. So these days there are many unstructured texts available online, whether it can be found in the email, in the social network, or in article online. To install the Gensim, you can use this command via pipe3 install, and you give the name of this library. And these give you a list of features that can be performed using GenSims. So one of the advantage in using GenSim library, it is give you a scalability and platform independent. It can be run on any platforms, and once your application grow, you can scale it to larger equipment, larger, for example, CPU and GPU support. And in addition to this, it's actually an open source library, which you don't have to pay for any purchasement. And it also have the similarity queries, which allow you to query to any similar information online. So this is the homework for this lecture. We have seen many libraries out there. However, each of them may give you a different performance as well as syntax, or how you can perform a particular NLP task using different syntax. So now we try to explore on using 3 libraries here. So you are required to install these 3 libraries. PASI, I think you have already installed these from the previous lecture. And next you install Pattern and PyTorch library. Next, what you need to do is to perform a particular NLP task. Let's say doing the sentiment analysis. And next, you compare the performance for using each different library to do the same task. And next, retrieve some data from Twitter using the pattern library. So to be able that you can retrieve the data from Twitter, you will need to get the access key from the Twitter account. You can access it to the developer account, and then you may need to require to fill up and create some information so that you can retrieve the access key. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and this is the final lecture of this course. And I hope that you have learned several topics from the lesson 1 to the 12 lessons. And in this chapter, it actually gives you more understanding how you can use different sources and different library to perform the NLP or machine learning test. Even we have many different libraries, however, there are disadvantages and advantages when we use each of them. So before you want to choose a particular library to perform your task in NLP or machine learning or deep learning, I recommend that you check on the official document which one should be used to adapt to your current problem. Okay, thank you for joining this course, and thank you for today joining the class.